Thank you for coming to my super brain date. It's not a regular brain date, it's a super brain date. So hopefully you'll have coffee. Um, so the title of this presentation is sort of the. What's that? We talk louder? Oh, I have to talk over the other group? Okay. So we're talking about the change economy. For those that are interested and like to read long, unstructured musings that I actually wrote and didn't use ChatGPT to write, I have a Substack that reflects on what I'm seeing in the software industry in real time. I effectively write for therapy because as I meet more and more startups and work with companies that are 300 million in revenue down to $500,000 in revenue, it's a very anxious time. And so I write to name the anxiety that I feel and put into words. So feel free to take a look at that. So just quickly, who's this guy? I'm a partner at Bonfire Ventures. We got about $1 billion under management. We write $3 to $4 million checks at the seed stage. Traditional seed stage companies have $500,000 to $1 million in revenue. Think about it, your big institutional round before you'd go and raise a Series A. All we do is application software. Now, one could ask, as we ask ourselves, what is application software in this age? If you think about how much has been commoditized in the platform stack, in 2003, when I was working at Salesforce.com, we took 60 cents of every dollar that we collected from customers and we bought servers and put them in our own data centers. So that was the first beginning of sort of the commoditization of the cloud at the lowest level before AWS and GCP. And basically so much of the tech stack is being commoditized as a service, especially inference and reasoning, which gets interesting. I'm on the board of some companies, angel investor. And before that, I worked, my first job out of business school was not too far from here at a company called Siebel Systems in San Mateo, which was the fastest growing software company at the time. Was an early employee 70 at Salesforce.com, build out go-to-market, build product, launched the App Exchange and a lot of their platform there. And then I ran a pre-revenue startup because I felt like it was a fraud, only working for two billionaires that had worked for Larry Ellison. It was really fucking hard, which brings a lot of empathy. The company's now at 100 million in revenue, but there were offsites of tears because I was in there running a playbook, Innovator's Dilemma playbook that I'd used to sell to sales and marketing to sell to HR people. And if anybody in this room sell to HR people, the Innovator's Dilemma playbook is not a good playbook to run. And the weird thing about HR people, they're supposed to be so nice, but they're so nice, they ghost you at the end of the quarter. They don't even respond when you're trying to close a deal. And this is our firm. We just raised a $250 million seed fund, which I wish somebody had told me the economics of venture capital before I got into it. But a $250 million seed fund means you return $10 billion net exit value for the LPs to get 3 times net. And when I got out of college, companies went public at 20 million in revenue. I don't know if going public is a thing anymore, but for those that are investors in funds, TVPI is interesting. DPI is really interesting because you're talking about 10 to 15 years. And I say the difference with Bonfire is, I don't know if it's the right model. We go deep with founders because this shit is hard. Most of my VC peers don't. They seem to be skiing or having a good time. They're doing something right. But like when our founders struggle, we kind of we feel the pain as well. But that's Bonfire. And so I've been writing over the last year, following ChatGPT in its earliest incarnations, and really thinking about how much, so much of software is fundamentally changing, and are people recognizing all the changes? And what this presentation is really about is we'll get to how do you differentiate as founders, and I'm going to leave time for talking for sure because open-ended question. I'll answer any question. But what happens if product innovation is 10 times faster than ever, right? SaaStr, when it first started, when Jason was doing this thing, it was the first vestiges of on-premise companies in an existing category. There was a first winner in a SaaS version of it. But all these companies were the same, where they would have a Dreamforce or whatever, a Workday Force, whatever. Once a year, somebody would come and be like, look at our amazing product changes. And the way in which we run these companies full throttle across the entire organization. If we think about all the blogs that you read and all the shit about here's how to go do this, it's all predicated in a world where your product kind of changes once a year. But what happens if your product changes every 30 days? Which, oh, by the way, if you're a founder in this room, your product has to change every 30 days. But what does that mean? No one has ever seen this pace of change. If you're sitting here as a founder thinking about differentiation and speed, et cetera, we have never, ever seen this pace of change in technology. I'm 55 years old. My first job, I got into business school because I was Jimmy Neutron. Company had DEC, VEX, green screens, and I was the first person to buy a PC. And I built a custom database on, for the old people in the room, like Access, Visual Basic, and Fox Pro, where I built a CRM system for sales forecasting. There was no email. I carved off a regional manager's hard drive on something called an IDEO drive. I FedExed it to them. They updated, they brought it back, and that was the forecast. And that was amazing innovation. 40% of the US population are using AI. We've never seen this. And the weirdest jump in AI and OpenAI's business over the last 2 months is because they allowed you to do Studio Ghibli versions of yourself. Like literally, if you look, they doubled their user count because people are really excited about doing Studio Ghibli versions, which is great. I love My Neighbor Totoro, but I didn't know that that was what was going to drive it. For 80% of code is getting written by AI. Now, for large companies that have large legacy data code bases, it's a little harder, but like you all are seeing that a lot of the coding is written by AI. And what's happening now in product development is what matters most is synthesis and prototyping. As a founder, how well do you understand the problem and the pain that your user has and the job to be done they want solved? How quickly can you synthesize, prototype, and iterate on that? The other really interesting thing is agentic solutions fundamentally change this thing. For 30 years, I've had some degree of success, but all the software I've associated is garbage because they're CRUD databases that somebody logs into, enters information, somebody else has a report that measures their performance, but in doing their job and whatever they have to go do, it doesn't help you do your job. It just doesn't. And it got worse in the cloud with REST APIs. When I was at Siebel Systems, a sales rep would use one piece of shitty software. Now with REST APIs, they use 12 pieces of software. And we don't understand why the hell they can't hit their number when they're alt-tabbing through 11 pieces of software. MCP, if you haven't dug into it, is game-changing. It is destroying historic walled gardens from an integration perspective. Right? If you're building an agentic solution, you're trying to think through, hey, what's the metadata I have in my database? What problem I'm solving? Because then at least from an AI UX, I have context over this. But actually with MCP, your agent can actually talk to another agent for your user and have context for that. That's great, but it also means that somebody else's solution can talk to you or yours. So it's a prisoner's dilemma. But every week, every month is an opportunity for delivering stepfold innovation. Now, what's really interesting, even at the seed stage, historically as a seed stage investor, somebody comes, they have a product, I got a team of 5 people, I've got 2 devs, look at this wedge product I have, but if you give me money and then I get to my A and my B, I'm going to build this amazing product. Okay, the reality is with not a lot of money, you can build products, and I think you know what WTF stands for. What it basically means, you walk into a customer who's using all this shitty software and all their legacy systems, and they see your product and they go, what the that can't work. Those are now possible. And if you build that, which I say you have to, if your product doesn't make people go, that can't work, keep trying. Because that's the bar for winning right now. And because these products basically have reduced the friction. If you think about most SaaS playbooks, if you've gone to SaaStr like 3 years ago, it'd be like how to build a successful account management expansion and CSM team. In enterprise, how to insert SCs and have a value selling team. And I've got a piece of software that's going to help you build a business case that somebody's going to buy into, etc. And you had to raise all this money for venture capitalists. We had this burn rate and this magic number because you had to buy all. And as a founder, you're like, okay, raise the money. Okay, I figured it out. I'm ready to scale. I was kind of lying to you. And you go hire like 20 sales expensive people and you hope it pays off. And you're like, oh shit, I didn't have any pipeline for them. Oh, well, I'll get some SDRs to dial or email. Oh, that's not working. Why is that not working? Because you took a 22-year-old lax bro and made them automate outbound emails and nobody responded to that. So if you think about it as a founder, so much of running a software company the last 10 years sucks because you have to have all these explainers in your business to your prospect. Why my product is going to help you solve your problem, how it's differentiated. Oh, I use Clay with Octave, and this is a better message. And then I get in, and here's the product. And then you have a rep, and then you bring an SE, and then and then I have a CSM that's going to onboard, which was always ridiculous, but onboard even in SaaS. Like your product's innovating, you want to expand, but we're just going to have some poor CSM. They're looking at a cost center that somehow is going to hold up your customer. Like all of this is because when you delivered the product, it didn't deliver value. A customer would have to use your product and then go do their job. But if you have a product now with a what the fuck interface, they look at and they realize in their head, oh my God, this is going to immediately help me do this job that I need or do the jobs of these people I don't need. You don't need all these explainers. What is there to explain? What is there an AE who brings donut who doesn't understand the product? The conversation is very quickly, hey, Mr. Customer, people like you tend to have these problems and these jobs doing and they suck. Yeah, let me show you how this does this. Like you don't need all, I'm the king of sales methodology. At Salesforce in 2003, I rolled out whatever the version of MedPick and value selling and you had to go do it and you had to do deals at one at discovery and all that crap. Like the simplification in you running your business and the purity of running your business, if you have this kind of product, as a founder, it makes somebody like me want to stop being a VC and go back into the game because I had to do it the hard way. And the ability to close deals in a few calls for 6 figures is something I've never seen. I have founders that have 10 people in their company. They walk to a customer, they show the product, and the customer goes, hey, wait a minute, that's amazing. How much does it cost? $250,000. Oh, and they go, okay, I want to go to this entire evaluation process. Now, I don't recommend this unless you're very bounded who you talk to and you know that you can solve this problem. It's not okay just to make your engineers work 24 hours a day because you commit to anything. The 3-month out, which was a no-no, we would never do a 3-month out. I'm not paying commission on an out. That's not recurring revenue. But the 3-month out, if you get them in and the users are in and you figure out onboarding is probably the most important part of what's changed in the SaaS playbook, you've just skipped 3 months of a sales process that people inject at the back end of the sales process to handle risk. I don't know if this is going to work. How do I validate? Who can I talk to, et cetera? This is what's happening right now. Now, you got to make sure your product works and it's not Vibe revenue. So as a founder, while it's incredibly chaotic and, oh my God, it's around the clock, it is, if you have a product that's a what the fuck product that fundamentally solves a core set of jobs to be done for people that they resonate to, it is a great time to be a founder. You can tap brand new markets that you could never target before. There's an entire class of an SMB sector across many verticals that don't use software, don't want to use software, just want to get their job done. You can't do paid search because they wouldn't even be looking for software. We have businesses that target 1 to 5 plumbers, contractors, et cetera. The team goes outbound with an agentic solution. They're adding $1.5 million a month, and their magic number is like 1.5, and their cash burn's like 0.5, because the product does the work for the end users who don't want to. If you really think about agentic software, what are we talking about? Reduce as much software as possible that the user has to interact with just to get their job done. The ability to expand and become, I know people like Parker Conrad, I'm following the Parker Conrad compound startup model. Okay. Historically in SaaS, if you went to your venture capitalist, like, I'm doing product A, and they're interested in product B, would be like, listen here, Sonny, you got to stick to your knitting. You need to dominate this one sector right now. You don't want to spread out your R&D team and get too distracted. And then maybe when you're Series B and C, we'll go after product 2. In fact, Clayton Christian's Innovator's Dilemma is all about how you move from product A to product 2. The reality is, you're not building screens. If you have the metadata and your agentic interface understands the context, you can do it in a month. And what's really interesting, because customers don't want to use multiple agents. A salesperson, an individual functional role does not want to use 7 agents. No sales rep wanted to use 11 solutions. Just like on your phone, sometimes somebody, you get texts, they work, but your weird friends on Android, it doesn't work with text, so they send you a WhatsApp and then your Facebook. And what the fuck? Just just give me a unified feed. That's what they want. And so if you are successful, your customers are going to come to you and go, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this? And you're like, I don't know. Let me try, which sounds crazy. Now, don't do what a lot of startups do, is dev actually does it, doesn't tell success or sales and marketing, releases it to the customer. The customer's like, oh, it's great. What does it cost? You're like, oh, I'm a pricing and packaging person. But you can do this. You can build more capital efficient businesses. And the last one is interesting, right? You can push your team to go super hard. The weird thing happened in the last 10 years of startups where you thought you could leave a large company, make the same money at a startup, and get all the perks and have work-life balance. That's a joke. Startups are war. It's why at Salesforce I gave new managers and hires 2 books, Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and Drive. And you could talk about work-life balance, but we know what we're trying to do is hire people that make horrible work-life balance decisions, and they can't imagine not, spending more time making your work. And you can do this. You don't want to be a complete ass, but the expectation is we're going to go hard. You're going to be in the office. We're going to iterate. Because the iteration loops are so fast in this new era. It's just not going to work otherwise. Now, what is differentiation? Now, are there technical moats? Were there technical moats in regular old SaaS? I guess in a world in which you're building a lot of screens, there are technical moats because you needed capital to build all these screens and have all these devs. You could say you have a broader product that no one knew how to use. But really, did you have technical moats? And the hardest thing as an investor is we're raising this $250 million fund, and I published an article that said 75% of all application software companies that you see today are going to disappear, and 50% of all application software categories are going to disappear. And then our investors are like, well, why are we going to give you $250 million? Oh, well, we'll figure out the right ones. We'll see. So you don't need a large team of devs to outcode others. Stop investing at the infra layer. Like the people that were investing at the infra layer in the last year, 2 years ago, oh, it's just a wrapper. We're building core things at the infra layer to make the wrapper better. And then, Claude and Perplexity and then OpenAI just built that. Don't do that. MCP is something really to study at. It's a prisoner's dilemma, but it's absolutely the way it's going. Now, what I will say is that I do believe metadata matters. If you don't have enough metadata around the problem you're solving such that the context your agent provides to solve a job isn't more interesting than what somebody could just do with an internal set of tooling, use Glean or, Anthropic's partnership with Databricks, you're done. So I think metadata is interesting. Proprietary data, I think if you're in a vertical where you have enough specific data, enough customers that you actually inject good old-fashioned ML, good old-fashioned AI, with generative AI, such that what you recommend, especially if you're recommending math, if there's math involved, I think it could work. And the last one is interesting. The second R, what's the second R in ARR? Anybody want to say, what's the second R? Recurring. Hey, Bobby. The second R can no longer be taken for granted. I mean, it should have never been taken for granted, right? We saw companies, all the sales tech tools that went from 175% NRR to 70% GRR in a year. We shouldn't have taken this all for granted, but what are you going to do? And so what I will say when we look at startups is that this is what trumps everything. The company raised money yesterday. I think Jason said it's one of the best teams he's ever said. When somebody went to look at an owner.com, they went, we're going to build a better restaurant tech software for restaurants. And probably were like, what? That sounds hard. But if you go look at the team that they assembled and the way that they execute, they brought an A-plus team in an agentic sort of operational way to crush. I think they raised at $1 or $1.2 billion yesterday. But what has always been true, honestly, for the winners in on-premise and SaaS, and now AI SaaS, we call it, is, do you have a unique insight that you can get the best talent to iterate the fastest on than others, or you don't? That's your differentiator, especially at the application layer. And so you have to have a unique insight to a problem, and you need to sit in that problem better than somebody else. I call it 12 by 6, right? Was that 12 hours a day, 6 days a week? People need to rest on Saturday or Sunday. You have to out-deliver the jobs to be done for your customer faster than someone else. Context focus is king. Vertical as a founder is 5 times easier to go do than horizontal. It's very hard to win in the horizontal space. You need to be an unbelievable marketer. You need to have outsized market energy to win that battle. And I think what is true in SaaS, and it is true now, is I've always said that I think the only long-term differentiation is customer love. It's really at the application layer what your mode is. You need to turn that into a movement. Now, it requires new operating motions, right? This is not 80% of the playbooks that have written over the last 10 years. Just take those and chuck them, which is, Bobby and I would sit down and say, okay, what are we doing for Dreamforce? We got to have a big announcement at Dreamforce. We're changing the industry. There's a crack in the ground. The world has changed. Here's our new software. And then we'd all organize around this. Now, what we would launch wasn't actually GA. We had a rule where, like, at least it was GA in the next 6 months, we could announce it. But most companies think about once a year. If you're delivering innovation every month, now what? If we're honest with ourselves, most companies suck and go to market explaining across their team, what is it we do for who that they give a shit about better than somebody else? Like it sits in some deck, in some PowerPoint deck that maybe somebody put in like Seismic that no one can go find. But if you do this every month, now what? I was sitting with one of our AI native companies that's off to the races, went from 0 to 20 million in 18 months, and I'm in their Slack feed, and dev is just releasing shit like every 7 days. And customer success, like, is this live? Marketing's like, have we told anybody about this? Does this work? What's alpha? What's beta? What the hell does GA mean anymore? It's complete chaos. And I try to remind them that, like, just because you can ship quickly doesn't mean it's a good thing. Because, like, if you ship something, like if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there and they don't understand and they don't see it, did the tree actually fall? Which is, humans could only absorb so much rate of change. And so orgs are fundamentally rethinking how they run their business. The world in which I had product and design and dev and QA, where we thought that dev and QA resources were expensive, so that product and design would have infinite time to come up with the perfect PRDs and MRDs, so we wouldn't waste, dev's times, and dev would spend a lot of time trying to figure out t-shirt sizes because that somehow made us better because that's what Jira said. Those days are over. These orgs are getting munged together. And I'd say our most leading edge companies, like design and product, is just building prototypes. There's no doc. They're just handing prototypes to dev. Success or support that we moved out of dev normally is back in dev. Because the iteration loops to hear from support, getting over to dev, to figure out what's working and not working, especially using AI, like there's stuff you do today kind of doesn't work, and then like in 3 weeks it does work, comes back in. And so what we're seeing is much smaller senior dev teams with more autonomy. Product has to use AI. The really good thing, what is AI really good at? Synthesizing stuff, right? So like if your product teams aren't leveraging AI to figure out like what the hell is going on from a research perspective and what we go do, you should rethink. You need time for spike periods because there's stuff that people ask you to do. Like in the old world, last 10 years, nobody ever, from a product side, put an MRD together asking themselves, can my dev team build this? They would look, okay, of our dev team, do I have front end and back end and skill set, et cetera. But no one was coming up like, here's a use case that I don't know if it's ever been done before. That was never done. It was in a known world. It was just a matter of, did I have the resource and prioritize? There's stuff that customers are asking you to do you actually don't know if you can do. So you got to leave time for spikes. Now, you can't have chaos. I don't care what you call it, but in your organization, at least understand what you're calling GA, alpha, or beta, and what your release frequency is. Whatever the definition is fine, right? But at least define it. Or there's certain stages. But you can't just have stuff being shipped at different versions, et cetera. Even though we're in this weird period for the last year where customers are okay with half-finished software. They get inside with you. They're kind of interested in working with you, et cetera. Like those days are going to end. What I will say is very interesting, having run product at Salesforce, which was we'd always say our customers are shitty product managers. They don't know how to build software. They can tell us their pains. And you get all these long lists of feature requests that you have, and you look at it like, oh, like some bad episode of A Few Good Men. You're like, they can't handle the truth. They're not product managers. And you'd oh, you don't really need that. You don't really need that. What is interesting now, in a world in which you're not building screens, but you're solving problems, as long as your smarter customers at least, they're actually very good product managers. They're giving you use cases or pain points that they want you to solve for, which at the purest abstraction, if you're building an agentic solution, is what you're building. This is a big one. Most software companies are horrible at this, right? They're just terrible at product marketing and messaging. And the weird thing is, if they're terrible at product marketing and messaging, the go-to-market team is inconsistent. And what has always been true in software and is true today is if you can't explain to a buyer why they should consider looking at you, why you do it better than somebody else, and why they need to do it now, good luck building a repeatable sales process that works. And so we've talked about jobs to be done as a product management construct. Oh, as a product manager, I've understood my users, and I don't want to just build like screens and tabs. I have a job to be done, so I build a steel thread. I think it's an interesting framework to think about across your company. Salespeople were never talking about jobs to be done. Marketing's not talking about jobs to be done. But in the end, this is what this is. What job is important to you that you would like us to do? Can we do it better, et cetera? And then the question is how do you iterate it? And I have some companies where I make them take a day off each month. If the release cycle is monthly, we take a day off and we refresh. Now, if there's no adjustment to that messaging, what is it we do for you that you actually give a shit better than somebody else, then whatever. We don't tell anybody about it. It doesn't matter. Like it either hits that bar or not. What I will say is you need to invest disproportionately in product marketing talent. Most software companies' product marketing organizations are horrible. We don't know what to do with product marketers, et cetera. Like you need a kick-ass product marketer. And they need to be able to iterate very quickly. Now, the good news is that AI really helps. In the old days, what would a good product marketer do? They'd listen to 4 calls. They'd be like, oh, shit, that's not working. We need to adjust the messaging and the rest of it. And they create a deck, and they put it in SaaStr, and no one would look at it. That's great. But what is AI really good at? AI is very good at listening to 1,000 calls and figuring out pretty quickly what's resonating, what's not resonating. More importantly, there are platforms on the front end where you actually create systems of truth, given all your content. What is your core ICP? Who are you targeting? What's the value prop for all the people such that when you execute at speed, so if you go use an AI SDR, you at least can inject it in there, right? Reason a lot of times the AI SDRs don't work is you've automated a 22-year-old lax bro, right? Because marketing for the old people in the room, email marketing used to sit in marketing when they cared about messaging. They became with outreach and sales loft that allowed you to spam people who hadn't opted in, and they do it in less than 49 email segments so you don't violate camp spam laws, but we gave messaging over. You go to a company, I'd be like, hey, who writes your emails? Jack over here. Who's Jack? Oh, Jack was was the cross captain, at so-and-so. Does he have like that and so we're like, oh, outbound doesn't work. It doesn't work, or calls don't work if you don't have context. Rethink your sales process. I still believe deals are won and lost at discovery, but you got to get to the product as quickly as possible. Your products either do or don't better job. Consider the couple month out process. I think the world of an AE and a separate SE are gone. I mean, unless like you're selling at the infra level and it's super technical. Like, I can't imagine an account executive who doesn't fundamentally understand the product. And across your companies, those people, your AEs that do really well, understand the product. And in this new world where the product is the job to be done, if they can't talk to the product and translate that pretty quickly, I think you're going to struggle. Really hard one companies are wrestling through now. What is a trial? What is onboarding? Right? Are you activating? Who's doing activation? When does activation occur? And what I will say is, we normally there's two functions that we think about in SaaS companies that we've underinvested in. We put cheap resources in, and that is what I would call an enablement, right? Where we think we're bad sales and marketing people are going to die, but that's not true if you run a good enablement org. And onboarding. Onboarding, oh, there's some junior people, they do onboarding, they click the thing on, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In this world where your product's value prop is going to change 6 to 12 times a year, onboarding reps and most onboarding programs focus on the first 90 days. Oh, do they understand our product and our playbook, and are they ramping? But if your product is going to change 5 to 6 X from day 91 to 365, what then? So it's more everboarding. It's not waterboarding. It's everboarding. And then for the SaaS solution, for the AI solutions, I would say onboarding is one of the most strategic things to think through. Anybody here use Superhuman? Anybody? Were you early one where Rahul onboarded you? You're like, what the hell? How's this? So I was like, I couldn't use the product. Rahul, the CEO, had to onboard me. He got on, da-da-da. But I understand why he did it, because it was a personal utility. And I either sort of grokked it quickly or I was going to churn. And what's very interesting with the agentic solutions you have to understand is at a user level, this is a very personal decision. They're looking at your product as if they hired a dedicated assistant who sat by their side, knew everything about the company, was there to help them, worked 24/7, never went on Glassdoor and called them mean, right? That's how they are going to think about your software. So just like if you think about your own journey or your spouse's journey, when you started using GPT, and then you're like, oh, and then there was context, you could create projects, and then it remembered your voice, and then when you went to deep research, you have these moments of oh shit. And that same thing occurs from an onboarding perspective. So one of my organizations actually hired somebody from Apple who was involved in their team. It's funny when you get a new iPhone, it's the same stupid phone with the battery now lasts, right? But that box is pretty cool. When you open up that, you're always like, oh, when I open this box, there's this little strip. It's the little magic fairy dust. You need to think about onboarding as a really important thing. And then, oh, by the way, what about everboarding them? If your product's going to charge 7 to 9 times a year, how is the customer going to know that? Don't tell me the CSM. It's not, you're good luck with that one. So there's onboarding. Stop thinking of support and self-service as something different. The thing I hate, which is, oh, I've got this great agentic solution, Brett. Okay, if it's not working, there's a bug, what do? I'll go over to this tab over here, there's support, and I've got some chat bot over here. What the hell? It's the same user. Why can't I just ask the agent I'm already talking to? Why do I have to go over here? That makes no sense, right? Let's talk about deployment, implementation. If you solve a given problem for a customer and you've done discovery, you've captured AI what their problems are, you understand the schema of your application. Why can't it onboard itself? Why can't I have an agent be like, okay, based on this information, your company, yep, that's correct. Okay, 80% of configuration is done. That, don't say that to all my SI friends out there, but AI is coming for the multi-billion-dollar SI industry. Customer health is not usage-based. We're always stunned. Oh, I had this churn. It was such a surprise. Their usage was super high. Well, I don't know. Could be that they had to use your product for 3 hours to get value out of it as opposed to 2 minutes. It's outcome-based. Did they ever achieve their outcome or they didn't? And yeah, I hate account managers. Somewhere the hunter-farmer model, I've always said I hate it. Companies deploy it. It turns into an IBM sales process where there's 7 people involved in a deal and they can't figure out their magic number and the rest of it. No account managers. So this is a great time to be a founder, right? Which is you can actually deliver an amazing product that actually delivers a lot of value to customers, which has not been true for 30 years. It just hasn't. You can make them much more successful at their job, and you can automate a lot of the low-level grunt work so humans can do what they're generally good at, higher-level work. Um, but you have to rethink how you run your company and speed and iteration. And you need to think about how are you going to run this business when you're innovating 12 times a year. So anyways, I'm done. So we can go anywhere in any discussions. I threw some out. Like, these are the questions my founders often ask for me about this. But if people have questions, feel free. Let's see, is this thing on? Here you go. Hand you the mic.
Yeah, obviously you've had a great career, but beyond that, how does your VC differentiate itself from other VCs investing in?
How do VCs differentiate from other VCs?
How does your VC differentiate itself?
We say we don't suck. Does that count? No. Look, on the $250 million fund, we'll probably do 25 core investments. So we're very concentrated. How I beat most VC firms, and they talk to our founders, we do a lot of work. The journey as a founder is it's a crazy decision to be a founder. You'd better basically feel like, I can't imagine not doing something else. The two journeys as a founder you have to go on are very hard. There's two journeys. One journey is, okay, it's me and 3 people, and I'm doing this in my Scrum team, and now I need to hire people and delegate and build functions, and then that's one, right? But the other journey is a very personal one, because the company can only grow as fast as the founder grows, right? And what happened in the ZERP era, when people got, $40 million, when they had $1 million in revenue, thought they had pre-market fit and hired all the people, and then they souffle caked, and now they have 20 million in revenue, and they don't cut burn. Oh, you're so mean. So we understand that journey. We spend a lot of time with our founders. I'd probably say in the first year I spend, if they want it, 100 hours with the founders. Do 30 hours of workshops out of the gate. Because whenever you tell me to raise money, you can only tell me so much. It's a mutual sales job. Take all the shit you sent to me. All right, let's get into it. Where are you really? And really think about, work with the founders to figure out what their core priorities are, where their gaps are, where we can help, what questions they have in which we have answers. Like if somebody says, how do I create a comp plan? A lot of this is obvious. What I will say is different is that most of the advice I would have given 2 years ago, I throw half of it away today. We leave an hour a week to talk to founders if they want. If they don't want to have it, it's fine. We help them figure out how to build the team, recruit their executives, and the rest of it. So that's how we differentiate.
How do you figure out their learning machines?
How do I figure out what?
If they are learning machines that can keep up with the pace.
I mean, it's sometimes obvious. I think the key is not everybody learns at the same rate, right? And how do you adapt to their speed? But some that aren't moving fast enough, you have to have the tough conversation, like you have to move faster. The hardest thing of being a VC who's involved is, how do you have this conversation? When the founder is like getting too far ahead of themselves, they're like, oh, I'm at $1 million in revenue. We're taking this thing public. We're like, whoa, you haven't figured out how to onboard your $500K, your $500 ARPU product that you'll get $10K in payments. Or the ones that are down. And so the ones that get too far ahead of themselves, you have to kind of bring them back. And the ones that are down, how do you find the moments to say, look, let's regroup, right? Because from seed to A, from zero to seed, 80% of what you do will fail, right? I was a founder at zero revenue, 30 days a week, you get kicked in the teeth, and one time somebody tries to kick you and grazes your cheek, you're like, let's throw a pizza party, right? Yay, let's celebrate. And then from seed to A, half, right? Because you don't know, you don't have data. So it's like being a therapist. It's a lot of fun. As a founder, you have two dreams. If you're a founder, you have the version of the math class dream. You're in school, there's some math class you didn't study for, and you show up and you take the test, right? My version, because I'm a little more dramatic, was I was on Broadway. I was a drama kid in high school. I'm the lead on a play at Broadway. My family's in the audience, New York Times is there, and I'm walking out and I'm naked and I forgot my lines. Every time I'd have that dream as a founder, I would wake up because I wasn't brave enough to understand. Was I brave? I didn't want to know if I was brave enough to go on stage. But, it's a journey. Other questions? Who's got the mic?
Thanks. Great talk. So a little bit on pricing.
Yeah.
One of the things as we move into this agentic world where a lot of folks, we're used to selling the recurring, right? And we are not fully automating the full job to be done or partially. Now, the end buyer, they pay a salary, so they get the idea that eventually there's going to be a recurring nature to this. But there's this kind of interim period, we're finding, and we're very specific vertical SaaS, where they only want to pay based on the specific outcome. And that's fine, but it's also, you're trying to layer that in on top of subscription. There's less of a multiple, there's kind of less of a subscription element. So yeah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, it's always fun when you ask somebody at SaaStr, how you doing on pricing? And they start to be defensive, like, look, I'll make this shit up. I made it up at $1 billion at Salesforce. Look, you can price per seat. That works in my mind if you're an assistant to a known worker. You can price based on some level of volume. I don't love paying on outcome. Nor do I don't love paying. The one I don't love is, what do you pay? I charge based on tokens. Well, tokens are 10x cheaper today. What the fuck? So I think the thing that we're struggling with on the pricing side, I would ask people to think through is, are you making individual employees that aren't going away more effective? And then within that area, is there a bunch of software they're using today that when they see your product, they're going to throw out? So there's money. Is what you're doing, because a lot of this, quite frankly, is some version of automation. So when you're in the automation business, that tends to be less individual-based, but more process-based. That tends to be more consumption, et cetera. I think the thing that I ask people to do is, how much labor arbitrage are you providing to these people? And so one challenge is, if you're trying to capture the value of labor arbitrage in a seat-based pricing, you're not going to get pricing right. And so I try to focus on pricing that's either seat-based, consumption-based, or arbitrage-based. And the bigger conversation is the arbitrage, because the arbitrage is tricky, right? Hey, I'm an AI SDR company. Okay, great. What do you charge for it? Hey, my SDR is $50,000. You're cool, dude. One of your SDRs would cost you $80,000. Well, your SDR, I have 80 SDRs. Can one of your guys do what 80 do? Yeah, so I'm just going to pay you $50,000. I'm going to get rid of $4 million in expense. Oh, no, that's not my pricing, right? So I don't think we've completely figured it out yet. But I either lean towards seat-based pricing or a labor arbitrage price. So it looks more like, look, we're going to charge X, Y, and Z. You're going to save $500,000 on this. Fuck it, I'll charge you $150,000. So it's not all figured out yet. The hardest one right now that I write about is, when product was slow to innovate, you had time to have a pricing and packaging committee to decide, oh, is this a feature and it's included? Is this a module that this user, or is this a brand new user I'm selling to? So a lot of customers, as you keep improving your agentic solutions, they come back like, was this included? Am I charging for this? And founders are like, I don't know. So I think that's something to wrestle and think through. And so what I tend to think about it is, if it allows you the job to be done that you're solving for the customer better, it's included however you charge for that unit. If you are solving for an additional job to be done for that user, you can consider charging for it. If you are doing a brand new job to be done for a new user within the org, you can charge for it. I don't know, I haven't wrestled it through. Manny's writing a lot on this. So Manny, who left Outreach, just raised his how to charge for agents. He's coming up with the CPQ platform for agents. So maybe take a look at what Manny's writing. Other questions?
Thank you for the talk. Quick question on, so there's a spectrum. Everybody needs agentic automation. And you can go to those folks who are ready to just buy it off the website and self-serve use it, or those folks who are enterprises or up in mid-market where you need, half a year sales cycle. And there's a spectrum because, I mean, obviously everybody likes large checks and large recurring revenue, but at the same time, at the speed of iteration, it makes sense to go PLG. So the question is, where do you think the optimal position on this spectrum is?
Well, when you said you gave me those two options, I think.
I mean, it's a spectrum. I think
but on
it's
that
like,
spectrum, I wouldn't say necessarily it's PLG. Start small. Because if you're selling it to large orgs, and this is very important with comp plans and the rest of it, we've had some companies where the reps go in and say it's $400,000 for everything you need. But when you do that, it's a longer sales process.
exactly, yeah.
There's risk, et cetera. And so we've had to tell them, no, start with this. Because what's very interesting is that the second somebody tastes for the first time an agentic, an assistant that's helping them do the product, they're like, holy shit. So, and then once you have them, you can expand. So the Magilla Gorilla deal, I think the real question in enterprise is how do you get smart? I have one poor founder who, successful 3-time founder, he's trying to sell into a vertical. He went into like, this vertical is using old cloud, non-cloud stuff, and we're going to change it. And then we realized the buyer just sucks. So like, they're pitching some SaaS solution and they've got an agentic solution and they're like, well, Accenture came back and said it's going to be a 12-month rollout for both products and we're going to start in Ulaanbaatar first before we roll it out to our tier 1 countries. And in those, to some extent, I've told them, just go tell the customer they're stupid. Go tell the customer you don't fucking get it. We're not doing 12-month rollouts. You're like, get started small. Now, what I will say on PLG is that I think you have to understand when you're engaging with people, you'll talk to them, you'll do a demo, sample data, interesting. And then second would be, give me some of your data. Let me do a demo with your data. And then the third question is, put it in their hands. And I think you have to think about putting it in their hands and they start using it, whether or not that's self-serve unassisted, whether that's a paid trial, or whether you're allowed to do that. That's what you have to wrestle and think through. We got time for 2 more questions.
So in the world of when everything is constantly changing and you're trying to do a release cycle, once every month or whatever, I think part of that answer is you don't want customers to necessarily have to know or have to opt in, but for those features that people do want to opt in, how do you get people to opt in and use them and stuff like that when you are releasing stuff all the time?
In my world, what I think needs to happen, this will be just how products work. You have an agentic assistant, if you're a user, and it says, hey, Brett, you're using me for this, this, and this. You know I can do this? Would you like to do this? Oh, shit. Like, I think the product sort of has to have this relationship with the user who basically lets them know what's sort of available once it's GA. In terms of the flagging, alpha, beta, et cetera, I mean, figure out what your behind the feature flag or alpha, beta thing is. My viewpoint was, and this was the way in SaaS, when I first would invest in SaaS companies, like, we ship daily. And I'd be like, I promise you're going to do quarterly. Because once you build a sales team and a success team and a customer team, you're going to build all this stuff and no one's going to know. And it's really important. When you think about the second R in renewing, I think 2 things are going to be interesting. Annual upfront payments and recurring. Because if we're saying it's like hiring an assistant, when I hire an assistant and say, I make $200,000 a year, Brett, do I give them $200,000 up front or divide that by 26 payments? No, I pay you monthly. Is it an annual contract or can I fire that employee? I may have to pay them severance, et cetera. Now, what is the decision? What is the decision for somebody to renew an agentic solution versus the software they use today? I think it's one, does the product do a great job of doing what I bought it to do? And I think you also evaluate it like, are there other things it can now do that I'm either using or can use compared to other things? Right? And so in my mind, your customers understanding all the capabilities that you have in a way that they can consume it is going to be paramount.